Hey, coming up on your favorite podcast, it's myself, it's Zach, it's Ryan, and we're back again covering the National Football League's never-ending trek to play 256 regular season games in the middle of a pandemic. Lots of interesting stuff happened this weekend. The last remaining undefeated team went down. We'll talk about that. We'll see who's number one this week. We'll also start looking at that playoff picture as it starts to take shape. And I'll probably take 5 seconds and lament the fact that my fantasy team is out of the playoffs and I don't know what I'm doing anymore. All that and a whole lot more coming up next on the pod. Hey, it's the Tim Anderson Podcast Show. I'm Tim Anderson, regular guy, host of the show. No football playing experience except for 8th grade football when I was really bad and started on the offensive line and alternated every play, and we ran 3 plays. Joined, as always, by my 2 favorite people in the world, my guests weekly in this spot. First one, guy who actually did play football and has coached football, but also an avid film watcher and really my college football draft expert, Ryan Nelson Kane.
Hi,
good day, Ryan.
Good to be here.
Yeah, and of course, joined also by a guy who also played and coached and still coaches and watches a lot of film and learned, actually took a class in college called football coaching from John Gallardi, one of the all-time NCAA Division III. Is he still the all-time guy in D2 or 3?
He's the all-time guy, period, I believe.
Oh, is he still the all? Yeah. So you learned from the best in NCAA history, John Gallardi. Of course, that is Zach. Knee neighbor. Good day, Zach.
Good evening, guys. How you doing?
I think that counts, right? When you take football coaching as a class. Now, let me ask you this. Did all the football players take that class as like an easy A over there, or was there actually some prerequisites to get into that?
Well, it was quite the class because it was really hard to get into. It was only run once every other year.
Wow.
And so it was full of seniors, and they did some sort of rule, so it was balanced out, so it was even numbers of guys and girls. And so I think my senior year when I was in it, the only football player in there was the starting center. That's
pretty fantastic. Gallardi's an interesting guy. I mean, he had so many interesting coaching theories. People who haven't looked him up should, because he didn't. I don't think they hit in practice. Did I read that right? Like he wasn't like a proponent necessarily of hitting at practice, that they did different things, and it all seemed to work, right?
Yeah, he definitely had his own thoughts, and some of those thoughts have become more commonplace now. But
ahead of his time.
He won 489 games, so he had some good idea what he was doing.
I would say so. We'll talk about some guys who don't have any idea what they're doing shortly here. But first, I got to say this, because I just came from night school. I do some night school teaching. That's kind of, my A job. Well, this is the B job to the A job. But I'm over there, and, we're in this is more of a geographical thing, but, there's that clay hole right next to the old city hall where the regional high school is. And it stinks, right? There are times where the smell is downright pungent. And the thing that's weird about this place is that people actually used to swim in this dump, which is incredible to me. I have no idea how they did that. Well, tonight, there was a different kind of smell coming from that. It was so bad. Let me explain to you. It was not just bad outside. You would go in the building, and it was like coming through the walls. Like, it reeked in my classroom tonight.
Well, Tim, as you know, and Zach, maybe as you know, that used to be the building that I worked in full time.
Yes.
That is not uncommon in that building.
I want to say this. You could have, Ryan, had a Italian-Mexican fusion dinner of like spaghetti bolognese and huevos rancheros.
That sounds like it smells like what it came out the other end.
Let it sit in your stomach for about 45 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour. Come into my room and just pound farts for 45 minutes. And it would improve the smell. It would have reminded me of a new car smell in comparison to what I was smelling. It was a disaster in there tonight. I just want to point that out.
I don't know. My wife might have something to say about that. I woke her up last night.
Jesus. This is a highly acclaimed show.
It is. Well, we like to come out of the gates swinging. That's the key. I will say, speaking of things that just stink, we watched that Dallas game last night, and I'm really glad we wrote those guys off. That defense is 0-1 Vikings caliber. Like it's one of the worst defenses I have ever seen.
That Cowboys defense is SAWFT.
It is one of the worst defenses I have. To watch Leighton Vander Esch be completely fooled by Lamar Jackson running the ball. Like, what? The quarterback who's fast keeps the ball and runs? No way. How do you not? Baffled by that. Just baffled.
Wasn't he the defensive rookie of the year?
Yeah, I don't know what's happened. Zach, did you watch the game? Did you see this?
I did. I saw it. I thought Lamar looked shaky at times in his return. But like every time he'd do something, kind of cringe a little bit. Like the next play, he'd do something amazing, and so that's what I was having fun with. And the Dallas experiment is not working. Right, they're on the backup quarterback. I get that. They were playing offensively well before Dak went down, but there's some big decisions to be made in Dallas this offseason.
I'm not a guy. Go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
I was just going to say. You're still fielding an NFL roster, ostensibly, right? You should be able to put together a roster of talented players that can at least compete. But they weren't even competitive in that game. Your kicker misses 4 field goals.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
4 field goals.
Yeah, that wasn't good at all.
You have one job, man. You got one. It's an indoor game.
Yeah.
You're not even playing in the wind.
Well, they were outside, weren't they? When they were at Baltimore last night.
It was in Baltimore.
It was in Baltimore, but still.
Oh, was it in Baltimore?
But he's a good kicker. He needs to make those. I mean, Matt Prater talked about this a couple of years ago. Like, hey, I get paid to do one job. I better be able to do it at a high rate. Otherwise, I shouldn't be here. Like, yeah, that's the correct answer.
And you can play the game, the what if game. But I mean, if he does make those field goals, it is a 1-score game. True. So Dallas didn't look good, but they're not the Jets.
No, they're not the Jets, but defensively, that's the problem. They got a lot of money on that defense. Like a lot of guys got paid in the last 2 years on that defense, and it doesn't look good. Like it's I get, and the question I guess I have for you, Zach, too, as we get through this a little bit is, and McCarthy, I know you were not a big McCarthy guy in Green Bay. We saw some, I know you and I talked a little bit about the statistics of Matt LaFleur. It just seems like a more creative offense. McCarthy, not as creative looking, at least at this point. Is this a potential one-and-done scenario in Dallas? Are we entering that phase? I'm usually not a big proponent of that. I'm really not. But this thing looks... the defense is unfit. You got to blow up the entire defense. Do you take the coach with you?
We talked about it a little bit briefly last week, I think, and I just can't see McCarthy getting fired because I don't think Jones will admit that he made the mistake that quickly. Because remember, when he got hired, there was the big deal about, McCarthy spent the night at his house and they watched film and did all, made popcorn and had pillow fights. And so I don't think, and like we said, they looked pretty good offensively with Dak. I think in the end, I was down on McCarthy at the end of his run in Green Bay because he didn't evolve very well. I thought he was kind of stuck in his ways, and it was hard watching games because it felt like the strategy each week was, well, fuck it, Aaron will fix it at the end.
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter what we do, Aaron will take care of it at the end. And it was really stressful watching those games every week. And it's like, now it's kind of nice. Like, Green Bay goes into some of these games and they're blowing people out.
Yeah.
Even with a shoddy defense. And, it's been refreshing.
Ryan, is there a chance that he doesn't come back next season?
Of course there's a chance. But, you have so many built-in excuses this year anyway. It's his first year. You lose your starting quarterback. You've got COVID going on around the league. Your timing's all thrown off. There's a whole load of built-in excuses. I don't think that they're the reason that they're bad. But, it's I think Zach's right. You have a whole lot of the same issues in Dallas that you had in Green Bay. And at some point, it becomes a question of, is Mike McCarthy a good head coach? Is he a good head coach, or did he have Aaron Rodgers for most of his career as a head coach? And that covers up a lot of problems. And look, I mean, you're kind of seeing a similar roster to what Mike McCarthy would have had in Green Bay under Matt LaFleur, and Matt LaFleur is doing a lot with it. I would argue right now, even without Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay is a better team with Matt LaFleur than they would be with Mike McCarthy at this stage. So I don't trust McCarthy. I don't know what Jerry feels, but Jerry's a guy that's we've seen time and time again. He's going to stick with the guy he's got. He's more likely to stick with his horse than switch. So I don't know. I think there's a chance, but I don't think it's likely by any stretch.
Hey Zach, is there a chance that? Oh, go ahead. I was just going to ask you,
like, get Lincoln Riley.
But yeah, unless you can get Lincoln Riley, right, or somebody. Yeah, I mean, you don't see him firing McCarthy for Eric Bieniemy, or something like that. But I mean, does the fact that Washington is 5-7 and they're on their third string quarterback, and the fact that the Giants are 5-7 with all the injuries they had to Saquon Barkley and the like, and they play better defense under a first-year head coach, is that? I mean, does that make the indictment a little bit worse, perhaps? Because everybody going into the season thought, well, they had not only the best quarterback in the division, but they also had the best backup in the division, and that's so far not showing out at all. Is that possible too?
I think it's part of it, but I think the Washington aspect of it maybe is a little overplayed. I mean, I think that Alex Smith is the best quarterback on that team to begin with. The question was some of the health issue. Was he all the way back? And seeing some of that footage on the game this week, they showed the rehab and stuff. I mean, it's amazing that he's playing football.
I agree. It's incredible.
But I do think that he is better than either of the guys they started at the start of the year, and he might be better than some of the starters is he better than Wentz? I mean, Wentz has been a dumpster fire.
He hasn't been very good.
And that's why I picked Washington when I picked them a couple weeks ago. It was because of Alex Smith.
Yeah, you like Smith. I mean, it sounds like they're going to get Daniel Jones back this week in New York. But yeah, do you like Smith over Colt McCoy in a big spot? Yeah, I mean, I do too. I like Alex Smith and Terry McLaurin a little better.
Yeah, I'm sticking to my guns. I think they win. I think they win the division. I think they're going to get 2 more wins, and the Giants are only going to get 1.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that the real tell for me right now is who Washington beat. That Pittsburgh team obviously isn't great. The fact that you get worst 11-0 trending on Twitter after you lose says a lot about your team.
It's such nonsense. They really were. I mean, it's such nonsense.
We saw the cracks in the team even at 11-0.
Cracks, but they're 11-1 still. They're going to beat somebody's ass here. I mean, they're going to win. Sure, they're going to win 13 games, 14 games.
To the Washington football team.
So what?
In prime time.
Washington's playing good football right now. Like, you got to admit, first of all, Washington has a pretty good defense right now. The injuries are starting to mount for Pittsburgh, especially at linebacker. They'd come off perhaps the most difficult 2 weeks of a team that had no COVID issues of any team in the league. I mean, to have their game canceled 5 times, to lose a mini bye week, to have to play on 4 days, notice. I mean, come on, there's a little bit there. The Washington had like 10, 11 days to plan for that game, and Pittsburgh had 4. I mean, there were some signs that game was going to happen and that Pittsburgh was ripe for the picking, but that doesn't mean that Pittsburgh sucks. I mean, come on.
Right. And that's part of the reason why I think, we made some of the comments we did last week and where they fell, where they did on my rankings.
Yeah. I can only imagine where they're going to be this week.
Here's the deal. I mean, I think Alex Smith is underrated as a quarterback in general, right? I mean, The guy he's 97-67 as a starter.
That's pretty good.
And obviously, quarterback wins. say what you will about them. But he's done it in Kansas City. He's done it in San Francisco. He's winning games in Washington, right? And so that's a similar winning percentage to like McNabb, Cunningham, Marino. He's in their ballpark. And obviously,
as far as win percentage, yeah.
Right. In winning percentage, correct.
Yeah.
And so, but I don't think he gets nearly the love of any of those guys. But in the end, right, it's about winning games.
That's true. Ryan, other than what we've talked about so far, I mean, obviously we've hit on some of the NFC East issues, but what is the A topic for you in the league through 13 weeks? Everybody's through their bye week. What's the A topic?
I think for me, the A topic is quickly becoming the Cleveland Browns. It's rare that you see a team that is playing good football, almost halfway through December, and nobody's really talking about them. We're not really hearing a whole lot about the Browns. Maybe it's because they got shellacked by the Ravens and the Steelers early in the season, but you kind of see this a little bit with run first teams that later in the year they start to pound the ball a little bit better and they start to look a little bit better. And we're kind of seeing that with Cleveland, that the problems that we're seeing with Pittsburgh's offense where they can't run the ball and they're kind of inconsistent. You're not really seeing that with Cleveland. They're running the ball well. They're throwing the ball where they have to throw it. They're not stretching the field a ton, but they're doing it where they can. And I think that even without their, who we came into the season thinking might be their best offensive weapon in down the field is in Odell Beckham Jr. They're able to move the ball down the field without it. And it's good offensive line play. It's solid play calling. It's keeping a team together that maybe early in the year you thought might be falling apart. There might be some drama for Kevin Stefanski, and he holds on to the reins and rights the ship. And suddenly they're in a position to not just go to the playoffs, but they're in a position to potentially win the division. So they've got a long way to go to get there. They've got another game against the Steelers in Week 17. They've got another game against the Ravens in Week 15. Or, I'm sorry, I think it might be this week actually. Either way, they've got another game against the Ravens. You win those games, and you're in a position to win the division, and that's a testament to a really, really good young coach. I think riding that ship and getting them in a position to do that, especially for a team as cursed as Cleveland's been.
Interesting. Zach, you have an A topic, or do you kind of think that's kind of the story? That certainly was the story of Week 13 was the Browns.
Yeah, I mean that was a huge win for them. I think the other story is everything that's going on in Philly. Right, they finally pulled the trigger on Jalen Hurts, which we've been talking about and kind of waiting for. And he looked okay, but then they decided he's going to get the start this week. So, and he's got a tough task, right? He's going up against the New Orleans Saints defense, who I think since Week 9 has given up like 2 passing touchdowns and has 9 interceptions. So it'll be a tough battle for him, but maybe we'll see what he's made out of.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
I was just going to say he gave them at least a little bit of a spark in that game. It wasn't a huge one, but they kind of started to move the ball a little bit more with him, and you start to wonder if maybe that running quarterback threat really does help them a little bit. But I mean, even that throw to Jalen Reagor looked pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, they went down, they scored a touchdown. I think he also helps them the running, not just from like designed run plays, but from how porous their offensive line is. Mm. He's allowed, he's turned what should be no gains or losses into positive yardage. And so I'm hoping he does well, because it's going to be real interesting to see what happens in Philly over the next, 8 months.
And I think he gives them a spark just because he's new, right? We've seen this a lot with quarterbacks. They come in, they kind of give a team a jolt for a little bit. They pick a team up, especially one that's really struggling. I don't think it's not like the offensive line got better. Hurts' skill set might be better for this team that's not very good on the offensive line. Wentz took a pounding. No quarterback got hit more than Carson Wentz. No quarterback's been sacked more than Carson Wentz. I mean, this guy has been beaten up and hammered and destroyed. Hurts gives them at least the ability to get out of the pocket occasionally. But the fact is, like, I think this is a tough spot to put Hurts in, and I worry that the one read, he feels like a one read guy. Like he's like I'm gonna go back, 3-step drop. My one read's not there. I'm running. He's got to show me some things to make me think otherwise. And I'm concerned that a team like New Orleans is going to make him, is really going to make him look average. And then what do you do? If that happens, then you can't. It's hard to go back to Wentz, and you're still in the $50 million quagmire with Wentz. Like there's still. I don't know what you do, Ryan. I mean, I think you're right. I think we've hit on the 2A topics, what's going on in Philly and what's going on in Cleveland. This Philly thing, I don't know how this works going forward.
I'll tell you what, the best thing that could happen to Doug Peterson is getting fired.
You might be right.
He needs to just get out of there. Because he'll land a job quickly somewhere else.
Yep, I think you're right.
And the situation there is going to be very difficult. Are you going to try to come back with Wentz next year? Are you going to keep him as a super expensive backup? Because as terrible as it sounds, that's a better option than just trading or cutting him.
That's right.
Trading or cutting him, the way the cap works, it is $50 million dead against the cap. If you keep him, he still counts as like $24 million. And then the next year you can cut him and it only costs you about $24 million. So he's probably got to be on the roster.
Has to be, I would think.
He's the most expensive backup quarterback in the NFL.
So the only other thing I can come up with is maybe if Jalen Hurts plays well, they can trade him and come back with some picks and make the team around Wentz better.
Yeah, I think for me, the Jalen Hurts thing, he's got some Case Keenum to his game. I think
not good.
I think he reminds me of that Case Keenum in Minnesota in like 2017, where you're playing behind a really bad offensive line, so you're running around a little bit, playing a little bit of hero ball. And you're right, it's not good. It's not sustainable. We saw it wasn't sustainable in 2017. But it makes for some exciting play. You get some talent around him. It can make for, exciting runs. And, if you get lucky, you get lucky. But at the end of the day, you're trying to, build something you can, plan on, not something that you get lucky with. And I think that the thing with Hurts is I don't know if he's going to be a tradable asset for them. You're right. I think Tim's right. I think he is a one-read quarterback. I think he was a one-read quarterback at Alabama. He was a one-read quarterback back in Oklahoma. And they put up numbers, but you're playing in the Big 12. And you got to remember, he got benched at Alabama. I mean, that's the best program in the country by a mile. And you get somebody else usurps you in college. I think that's an indictment. And sure, you go to Oklahoma and you play a good year and you do really well. But at the same time, you're playing Big 12 defenses. And we know how bad Big 12 defenses are. And now you're in the NFL. And you put together a couple good plays coming off the bench, but now you're going to have a team that has a week to prepare for you. And if a team has a week to prepare for you, we've seen guys that come in and do well in spots in games, and then they get the week that team can look at you on film and see what you've done, and they completely shut you down. They'll take everything away. And New Orleans is a really, really good defense. They have troubles. They have bad games here and there, but that's a team that has a ton of talent. They can get a ton of pressure on the quarterback. They have some decent corners on the outside, and they've got some good guys over the top. And we really haven't seen Philadelphia be able to take the top off of teams anyway. So I'm really worried that not only is Philly going to be stuck in this quagmire for 2 years, but they're going to realize how deep in this quagmire they are when they watch Jalen Hurts play a real defense this week. And they watch Jalen Hurts, play a defense that has that isn't, up big in a game where they haven't reviewed the film for this kid. So I think that they're really going to realize how bad it is this week.
I think you need to reserve judgment this week, right? I mean, he's going up against maybe the best defense in the NFL right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to panic if he doesn't have a great game in his first start.
But will Philly?
What?
Will Philly panic, though? That's the question. Like, if they see that he has a bad game, is Doug Peterson going to go back to Wentz? Like, or is he basically saying, nope, I'm all in with this guy. I'm going to ride him till the end?
I think you need to, at this point, tell Wentz he's done for the year.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm going Jalen Hurts to figure out what I have, to decide if I do want to keep him. But I don't even know, like, what's the best case scenario? Like, what is the best thing that can happen this year to the Eagles? Is it that Hurts goes out and just lights it up? Because you're still in a mess. Like Ryan said, you've got the dead money. You've got that's going to be the problem with this. Like, they may stink for a couple of years, and they're still not going to be able to come out of it on the other side. I don't see what the light is at the end of the tunnel for them.
You might be right that the move here is Peterson basically says, you know what? I think the best case scenario for Doug Peterson, play Jalen Hurts, let Hurts take his lumps, get fired. If you're 4-12 and, Jeffrey Lurie looks down and says, okay, well, Wentz and Peterson both can't come back next year. It's going to cost me $50 million to get rid of Wentz. It's going to cost me $5 million to get rid of Doug Peterson. I'm going to get rid of Doug Peterson, bring in a different guy, let him assess the quarterback situation over the year, let them have a quarterback battle in a true training camp, and you ride it out, whatever that is for that season. Would be my interpretation of what he would have to do. That, to me, that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario, I think, is Jalen Hurts plays well. They win 3 of these games. They go 6 and whatever. You get a middle draft pick, and you're in this limbo, right? Where are we good? Are we bad? Are we a year away? Are we just a few tweaks away? And like that's the word. That's where Dallas has been. Like, that's where they've been under Jason Garrett for 10 years. They didn't, they were too good to be bad, too bad to be good. I'm a little concerned there.
Well, I have them right now, looking at the rest of their season. I've got them finishing 5-10-1. That would give them the number 8 draft pick. And you're kind of in a quandary here. First of all, I think that their defense is pretty good. That Philadelphia defense can ball. They've got some good guys. They've got some solid players. Some of them getting a little older, and that's a bit of a concern. But you can ride that while you rebuild your offense a little bit, because obviously the concern in Philadelphia right now is offense. But you need to shore up your offensive line in a pretty major way. But you also need some weapons, and you really whiffed this year taking Rager over Jefferson.
That was baffling. Still baffled by that.
And I think that there's a lot of people who recognize that now, especially not just with how good Jefferson's been, but with how invisible Rager's been. Right? It's one thing if Rager's putting up a respectable number and he's doing a good thing, week in and week out, and he's having a good year. But
T. Higgins,
T. Higgins too. T. Higgins could have changed this offense. It would have looked really good for Philadelphia. Instead, he's playing in Cincinnati. But the point that you make is you really wonder if maybe you whiffed too big on the wide receiver, and now you can't really come back. Because you missed in the best class of receivers. You took the guy who really has been invisible in this. Because you look around the league, and it's the rookie receivers have had really good years, with the noted exception of Jalen Rager. So I think that you got to ask the question: do we want to shore up the outside? Do we want to give him more weapons, or do we want to shore up the middle and potentially give him more time? And that really comes down to who's your quarterback, right? Because you can go another year playing behind an average offensive line with a mobile quarterback if you put more weapons around him. Or if Carson Wentz is your guy, if you're going to stick with the money, you have to shore up that offensive line because he's shown that he can't play without protection. So I think the next couple of weeks are going to determine how they play, or how the plan goes into the offseason.
The piece of this is, whose idea was it to draft the quarterback?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Right? Was that a coach's call? Was that a GM's call? How did the coach feel about it? Because I think that will reveal a little bit too. Because taking a quarterback at 2 in the second round,
it creates that conversation. It really does.
Right. It means that you think that guy's a future starter.
And
right.
And not just taking him in the second round, taking him over other needs. right? You have a lot of needs on offense. There were a lot of offensive line picks that were still available when they took Jalen Hurts, and they took Hurts. So I mean, I think it calls into question maybe a rift in the front office. I wonder if they're as committed to each other, Peterson and Roseman, as it seemed they were a couple of years ago. Because this to me strikes me as a conflict. I don't know how an offensive coach can allow a quarterback controversy when there are so many other needs on the team.
I think that they saw him as a Taysom Hill, that they were going to line him up as a gadget player 15 times a game and do some different, he'd be at quarterback for 5 plays. He might be in on the field with, I don't know. That's the only thing I could come up with.
Yeah.
That's an expensive draft capital for a Taysom Hill player.
Well, but not if you think he's a weapon, right?
True.
If you think he's an athletic weapon that you're going to get on the field and use in a multitude of ways, because, looking at the other offensive picks around that time in the draft, the only one that's really jumping off the page at me right now is J.K. Dobbins, and he's taken time to develop this year.
Right.
But, Van Jefferson, Denzel Mims, A.J. Dillon, it's not like any of those guys are helping right now. So that's the only thing I could think of is they thought maybe this is a guy who can do a lot of things. And I drafted him in a dynasty league because I thought maybe that's what they were going to do with him. Like, hey, here's a guy who might get on the field quicker than a lot of people. And it's worked out in a better way for me actually now because he's going to start. But
and I know a lot of people have thrown the comparison out. Well, why would you take a quarterback there? Well, it's like, Green Bay took Jordan Love. And to me, they're totally different things because you're talking about a 35-year-old guy coming off a couple of tough years versus a 25-year-old guy that you just gave $100 million to. Feels like two totally different animals. They're not comparable.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they're comparable.
All right, let's stay with this Philly theme and move it right to our game that we're going to play this week. A little over-under, just a real simple over-under game for us this week. Just a chance to kind of look at where we are as we move towards the end of the regular season. There's so much change that's going to be on the horizon in the next month. So we thought we'd do a little over-under and just kind of see where we're at. And let's stay with the Philly theme for the first one. I had this as number 4, but let's just move it to another one so we can close the book on this. 5.5 more wins for Wentz as a Philly starter in career. Over-under, 5.5.
I am going to go under. I don't think he starts next year.
I'm with Zach.
Maybe he starts some games, but he doesn't start the year as the starter.
And I don't think they've got a talented enough team around him to win 5 games.
So we're going to go under 5 games won for Wentz the rest of his career as a starter in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia,
yes. I think he's a guy that strikes me, like I said, the Ryan Tannehill type. I think he goes somewhere in a couple years, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has a little bit of a renaissance. Wouldn't be surprised.
He needs a change of scenery so badly.
I think so too.
I mean, I think you got to get out of Philly.
And I know we've talked over and over and over about the $50 million cap hit, but it is possible that Philly just goes, we're going to be terrible next year, F it.
It's possible.
Let's just do it. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off.
Especially if you buy into the coach. Like, if you really believe you've got something in Doug Peterson and you don't want to just jettison that and you don't want to blow this all up and you know that, hey, okay, we're going to eat this for a year, but we believe in the coach and we believe in the system and we've got a quarterback on a rookie contract, okay. All right, maybe that's what you do. Maybe that's what you
and
do.
If that's your plan, I think you need to extend the coach. You
and
extend the head coach and say, we get it. We know you're going to suck. We believe in you. We want to make it clear that you're the guy. Fix it.
Here we go. Staying with the coaches fired theme, how about this? 2.5 more coaches fired at season's end. We've already had 3 coaches. Is it 3 or 4? 3.
4.
4, that's right. We've had Patricia. We've had Quinn. We've had O'Brien, and who's the 4th? I'm drawing a blank. Or is that just the 3 that have been fired so far? Is it just 3? Quinn, O'Brien, Patricia. Is there a 4th?
No, you might be right.
Might be right. So we got 3. Are we saying over under 2.5 more on top of that fired at season's end?
I am going to take the over.
The over.
The over. Yep, you're going to have at least 3 more openings. There's going to be an opening in LA with the Chargers. There's going to be an opening in Jacksonville. And there's going to be an opening with the New York Jets. At least.
I should have said 3.5. Ryan, you agree?
You might even see the Bears open too.
Oh, Jesus.
I think I agree with that. I think that, and I think that there could be a couple surprise retirements too. I'm starting to worry about how old Pete Carroll's getting. I mean, they're a team that looks like they're kind of hanging around, but his baby's the defense, and they're not what they were. And you start to wonder if maybe they could use some fresh blood, and rather than talk about a decline, maybe he retires and lets somebody else take it. I'm just thinking out loud, but no, I think over is the right call. I think all the teams that Zach mentioned are teams that I think they're all going to get fired. I think Chicago too. I don't think that Matt Nagy's back next year. I'd be shocked if he is.
So
I also think Fangio's on the hot seat in Denver.
Yeah, that's true too.
You think so?
I think that there's been some. He may not get fired at the end of the year, but he will start the next year as maybe the leading candidate to get fired in season.
I wonder if maybe Elway is on the hotter seat.
Nah, he's got way more capital than Vic Fangio does, though, don't you think? Way more in Denver.
Well, Vic Fangio's only been there for a year or two, and Elway really hasn't put a team together other than the ones he had when he got Peyton Manning.
But here's the deal: the Broncos have a decent quarterback. They've put weapons around the quarterback. Now I know he got hurt a little bit, which has kind of messed some of their stuff this year. But what is Fangio? Why was he hired? He was hired because he had unbelievable defenses, and their defenses have been average at best the last 2 years. And so if you are hanging your hat on your defense and your defense is struggling, I could see that they maybe go, hey, we need someone to come in here and develop our quarterback.
And they have done nothing but defensive coaches with the exception of Kubiak. Like they went Vance Joseph, they're gone Vic Fangio, they had John Fox. They like hiring these defensive head coaches, but Fangio never really inspires me. I don't know how much he inspires their fan base, and I do think there's something to be said for that. So you guys are thinking there's a potential that almost like 1/3 of the coaches, or at least 25% of the head coaches, there's going to be 25% of the league's going to have job openings at the end of the season. We think that's possible? Like
Sure.
8-9 jobs, 8-9 openings at season's end.
Well, yeah. If you're counting the ones that are already open,
if you count the ones that are already open, there could be 9 new coaches in new spots next year. If you factor in McCarthy, if you factor in Fangio or Nagy or some of these other guys, man, that's a lot. That's way over. I should have gone way over than 3.5. I thought 3.5.
Well, and look, I mean, the Fangio point you make is a good one. We kind of talked about that when he got hired, right? That it was kind of an odd hire. That it made sense. It was a defensive guy on a decent defense that could apply some pressure. But you kind of looked at Vic Fangio like, is this guy really a head coach? Like who? D
coordinator for a long time. He reminded me of like Mike Zimmer, a guy who just kind of hung around the league for a long, long time as a defensive coach, and like late in his career he gets this opportunity. It does seem like that, but yeah, it's. I didn't think about Fangio, but you're right. I mean, 2 years, it does seem like 2 years is the number now. You used to kind of get 3. 3's not a guarantee anymore. Like, they need to see progress quickly. And I don't know if they're seeing that fast enough.
He may not be the guy who gets fired this year, but if he doesn't, he's number 1 on the hot seat at the start of next year.
First coach fired potentially next year. Yeah, possibly. How about this one? All right, we know there's going to be a lot of openings then. Over under 2.5 minority head coaches hired next in the offseason. This is an interesting time in our history. There's a lot of really qualified guys that feel like they're due or overdue for a gig. Is this the year that we see a big surge in minority head coaches? Over under.
I'm going to go under.
Under 2.5. Under 2.5.
I just don't think there's that many candidates.
Yeah, I'm gonna plead a little bit of being naive here to who the hot candidates are right now.
Bieniemy, we feel like that's a cinch, right? We think Bieniemy is going to get a job.
We felt like that for like 3 years.
Right.
But you do feel like that's just it. Now the Bills come due on Bieniemy. He has to get a job this year.
We thought he was going to get a job last year.
And he probably should have.
But I wonder how much of that was him saying, I don't want this job.
Could be.
Right? Like, and maybe that didn't quite get out there, but he went in, he met with Team X, interviewed, and then came out of there and said, you know what, this probably isn't the right fit. And they said, okay, we'll hire someone else.
Well, that's why I didn't.
Do you get the feeling that maybe he's kind of a guy that has finally said, I've seen what happens when other coaches go places and it doesn't always go well. I can stick here and wait out Andy Reid and become the heir apparent to Andy Reid in Kansas City.
It's possible.
Yeah, the issue with that is you end up like Josh McDaniels where you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting?
Yeah.
I mean, sure you could, but you rack up rings. I mean, why not? You're going to you think about Patrick Mahomes is going to play he's going to play for another 20 years, right? If he stays healthy, he'll play another 20 years. If that's the case, you've got a built-in quarterback. He's going to be with Kansas City ostensibly for his career, unless something goes horribly awry. You've got the quarterback with all the talent. You've got it's your offensive system. I mean, why not?
I guess the comeback would be, like, I heard Rich Eisen talk about this, like, or Dan Patrick, I think, might have said it, like, do you fire McCarthy and hire Bieniemy? I feel like, yeah, his voice did get really super. Darth Vader came for football takes all of a sudden. It was pretty incredible there.
Is something wrong? Like, does it actually sound?
Yeah, you got a base Darth Vader thing going. I thought maybe you just swallowed something and, like, you had something sitting in the bottom of your throat or something, but it was pretty incredible. I actually thought it made your takes more believable and even more manly sounding. I don't even hear you now. Now you're just gone now. But Zach was afraid to even argue with you, and I don't blame him for that. I was afraid too. Like, I wouldn't have argued with you. But
weird. I had no idea.
And there he is. He's so he does have like a deep. You got to hear when you hear the playback on this, you're gonna be like, what the hell happened to me? It's gonna be great.
I have never been a big proponent of hiring the longtime loyal assistant.
Right.
Because my question is, why were you the longtime loyal assistant? Why didn't you go get your own job? Was he not motivated enough? Was he not aggressive enough? Is he too lazy? I don't know. Like, it brings up questions. But when you look back, and it happens more often in college, I think, than it does necessarily in the pros. But, like, I think back to North Carolina and Bill Guthridge, right?
Yep.
I mean, he was a disaster. And it just seems to happen a lot that way. So I don't know. I'm not huge on if the guy hangs around forever. And in talking about this too, another opening that is possible is you might have an opening in New England. Not from getting fired, but from a retirement, right? Maybe Bill stuck around for a year and proved he could be competitive without Tom, and he's getting up there in age too.
Yeah, that's possible too. I think that's. So I have Bieniemy on my list of a guy that has to get hired. Has to be first guy off the board this year. I think Robert Saleh is going to get hired. Like, I predicted he'd go to Detroit 2 weeks ago. I'm standing by that. I think Robert Saleh is going to get hired. I think to me that's a done deal. I think what he's done in San Francisco, considering their challenges, is there. I think Raheem Morris has done a really good job in Atlanta as the interim. I think Raheem Morris could definitely make a case that I've done enough to even maybe keep this job in Atlanta. Whether or not he does is another story, but I think it's possible.
He'll get a look for another job.
I think so. And so, and we don't know. There might be some other guys that are kind of sitting there that are coordinators, D coordinators, O coordinators, and we just don't know their names yet because they're not these high-profile guys. Like who saw Joe Judge coming last year as a coach that got hired? So there could be somebody kind of sifting around out here that we just haven't seen yet that might get a look at the end of this year. So but we've just thrown 3 out there, but we both think under.
No, I think maybe it goes over
to maybe just 3.
I'm like I said, like I'm not up to date on who the hot candidates are, but in looking now and hearing to some of you guys talk, because there's also guys out there who have done it before and are being successful at their job now. I mean, Todd Bowles has done a good job as D coordinator in Tampa.
Yep. And
he's got head coaching experience, right? And for some people, they like that, right? They like someone who's been through it once before.
Yep. Vance Joseph could get another look after what he's doing, with his time in Arizona. I don't think their defense is very good yet, but I mean, I think Vance Joseph could get another look. Leslie Frazier could get another look because
that's what I was just gonna say. Ryan's guy, Leslie Frazier. he's looked. I mean, the Bills are playing well.
Yeah, and the defense is pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm if I'm Eric Bieniemy, and I'm looking at the openings and I'm thinking about where I could go.
Boy, he's getting deeper. This is so hot. You're kind of it's very sexy, Ryan. I gotta tell you something.
Honest to God, I don't know what's happening.
I'm waiting till after the podcast when Ryan's like, coming up, you can call 1-900-855 chat live.
Look, so if I'm Eric Bieniemy, right? I'm wondering if maybe I'm thinking about going to LA with Herbert and the skill that's in Los Angeles right now, if maybe that's the long-term spot for a good offensive coach.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly.
I don't know. Do you want to go get in the division with Kansas City and Mahomes?
That's kind of my detraction. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
That he wants to go beat Kansas City?
Oh, that would be something, wouldn't it?
Maybe not that he wants to beat them, but maybe that's the best spot, and it just happens to be in the division.
We'll see if we can get Ryan to sound like himself again here in just a second. We'll keep it going. While that's happening, Zach, I'll throw this one at you first, and I'll clue Ryan back in when he gets back in here. There's Ryan back in. We'll see if he sounds any better.
Let's try that.
Yeah, there he is. He's back.
Hey,
he's back with that tenor voice, that really nice, that nice second tenor that I like so much. I mean, I was scared for my life.
I have no idea what it sounds like.
You sounded like a guy who had one of those machines. Like you watch those episodes of Criminal Minds, like you got to give me $200,000 or else your wife doesn't come home. You know that kind. I thought that's what the message was going to be. It's the most ridiculous thing. Anyway, all right, last one on the over/under. 1.5 playoff games won for the NFC East winner.
Under.
Do they get one? How about 0.5? If I made it 0.5, do you take the over or the under?
No, under.
That might be tempting. Depending, I mean, it's hard right now because we're unsure of the matchups and how it's all going to fall out, and what it is now is not what it's going to be in 4 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
They're going to host a game, though, guys. Like, they're going to host a game in January, either in New York or in Washington. That's not going to be easy.
Well, I have the Washington football team winning this division at 7-9, and that in my projection, obviously, this is just me looking at the schedule and seeing who goes where. I've got them hosting the Rams in the first round, and I don't see them winning that game. I just don't see them winning it.
If they end up hosting the Rams, I feel like that's one of the best possible matchups for them, though.
I think they could beat the Rams. Rams going cross-country. The Rams are not the most consistent team in the world. Do you really trust Jared Goff in a big spot with all your money?
Cross-country, Jared Goff, an offense that likes to throw it more than they run it, and a snowstorm in Washington.
I don't know. It's kind of tempting to take the Washington professional football team. And there's some Ubuntu there this year. Like Alex Smith coming back. You got Ron Rivera fighting cancer. They're changing their racist logo for the first time. I mean, there's a lot of it's kismet. It might be kismet right now. Are you kidding me? Could be. They could make it all the way to the NFC title game. Their defense is legit.
See, I don't know if they'd make it all the way to the NFC title game. Here's the thing, because if you beat the Rams, again, in my scenario, you have to go to Seattle.
The Giants just went there and won with a backup quarterback.
I don't see it. You're telling me that you think you could not only defy the odds and win the round one game with a losing record against the Los Angeles Rams, which fine, I'll give you it's a good shot.
2-point underdogs at most. No way.
All right, I'll give you that game. Fine. We'll just say hypothetically they win it.
Sure.
You're telling me that they can then go on the road, cross country, and play this Seattle team and beat them.
The Seattle team can't stop anybody. Like they can't score. They can't score or stop anybody. They haven't in 3 weeks. They lost to Colt McCoy. Zach, help us out.
Alex Smith, there's something about him that I mean, you want to cheer for him after the injury. Yeah. And how many times did Alex Smith, lost his job when he didn't even really lose it, right? Like they just moved on to someone else who they thought was better. I don't know. It'll be fun. I mean, I hope it's Washington that gets in.
I'm rooting for your team.
If Washington does that, if hypothetically they get there and they win their first game and they beat Seattle in their second game or whoever they play in the second game, and they move on to play the 7th seed Vikings in the NFC title game.
In Washington.
In
Washington, remember.
Who are we taking in that dumpster fire of an NFC title game?
Well, you do make the point though that I think we agree that Green Bay and New Orleans are the best 2 teams in the NFC, and we think that that's by a pretty wide margin, right? I mean, that's
but that's the thing is I don't know how wide that margin actually is. Minnesota beat Green Bay and beat them pretty convincingly on the road, and New Orleans has not. I mean, they've been good, but have they been world beaters?
Well, since week 4, yeah. I think since week 4 or 5, they haven't lost with the backup quarterback.
New Orleans is going to see a little bit of a regression to the mean here. I threw out that defensive stat earlier. Yep. You cannot play at that level for that long.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So there'll be some of that. I don't know. I mean, hey, like we're discussing all this. Alex Smith does have more career wins than Russell Wilson, Steve Young, Bart Starr.
That's true.
Troy Aikman.
You're
wild.
You just wait. When we have the pod in 4 or 5 years, Zach will be sitting there going, I really like Alex Smith for the Hall of Fame here on the first or second ballot. Look at all these stats. Look at all the wins. You might be right. You might be onto something at that point.
Fascinating. Like, I mean, how many wins he's got?
He is like, he's going to be Vinny Testaverde without the passing numbers. Like, he's going to sit there and they're going to be like, well, that's a pretty good career he's got here, all things considered. And yet, he's going to be overlooked. There's no doubt about that.
Hey, he's won 7 more games than Vinny Testaverde has, and counting.
That's he's got more than Kurt Warner. There's no doubt about that. Kurt Warner's in the Hall of Fame. So, I think, right? He has more wins than Kurt Warner.
I'm not sure.
I don't think Kurt Warner doesn't have that many more. I can't imagine than 97.
No, Kurt Warner only has 67.
Yeah, because he only had like 5 good seasons. I mean, they're great seasons. Don't get me wrong, but
Alex Smith is number 22 all time.
22 all time in wins.
In quarterback wins.
Alex freaking Smith is number 22 all time,
and that's with 2 lost seasons.
He is, and he's gonna. I mean, assuming he wins a couple more, he could be up to 16 by the end of the year. If he wins 2 more games, he's up to 16 at the end of the year.
That's incredible.
He's up to 8. He'll be 18th.
Oh my!
But there's a bunch of there's a lot of guys tied. He's at 97. And McNabb, Flacco, Dave Craig, and Drew Bledsoe all have 98.
That's mind blowing.
I mean, realistically, if he finishes this season and plays one more season as a starter somewhere, he will be top 15. Because he's going to pass Jim Kelly and Warren Moon, and he'll probably settle in right around Terry Bradshaw.
I want you to look at my face right now.
Yeah, Ryan looks like somebody I can't describe Ryan's face right now. It's perplexed. It's apoplectic. I mean, it's baffled.
I don't know how to take this news.
He looks like Ted Cottrell circa 2004 when he ran the Vikings defense and Manning just kept throwing touchdowns one right after the other, and just kept panning to him on the sidelines with no reaction.
I feel like Sam Darnold watching a defense on Halloween. The Alex Smith?
It's weird because he'll end up in a spot where he is everyone above him will be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
is either in or will be.
That's
once if he gets to 105. I mean, if he gets to 98, everyone above him is probably a Hall of Famer.
Is Alex Smith a Hall of Fame quarterback?
No. But that's going to be the analytics debate. Like, because now it's going to be about the numbers, right? And it's going to be the eye test versus the numbers on a guy like Alex Smith. The eye test to me says no.
Quarterback wins are not, right? I mean, there's so much more that goes into a win than the quarterback, right? It's not,
Yep.
And even, it's kind of like wins and losses on the quarterback is the same as wins and losses on your pitcher, right? They don't matter as much anymore. But I just do think there's something to be said that they've won a lot of games with him as the quarterback.
If
right?
he takes him to the playoffs, that's 3 teams. Like, if he takes the Washington professional football team to the playoffs, that means he would have taken San Francisco, Kansas City, and Washington. Every team he went to, he would have taken them to the playoffs. I mean, that says something. That's pretty good.
That's bananas. I'm inclined not to believe it.
I do not believe your numbers, sir. Anyway. All right, we should go to take your pick because we're
up against it.
What a show! What a podcast! We're just all kinds of stuff happening here today on the pod. I love it.
The Alex Smith Hour.
The Alex Smith, Philadelphia, Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts Hour, right here. Brought to you by no one. Go ahead and
NFC
sponsor that.
Radio.
Oh, it's going to be great. All right, here we go. Time for take your pick. I did 2-1 last week. I think Zach, you were 1-2.
1-2.
1-2, and Rhino, you had a tough one.
Yep.
You had a tough go of it. Tough scene. It was a tough
0-3?
0-3 for old Rhino last week. So
right.
It was a bad go. Here we go. First game. It's right away tomorrow night. Tomorrow night. We had a 1 day between weeks. Which I'm kind of digging. I had Monday Night Football, Tuesday Night Football, Thursday Night Football. This is great. Thursday Night Football back this week. It's New England on the road against the Los Angeles Rams. New England, with the quarterback throwing 69 yards, beat the Chargers 45-0.
Nice.
That is incredible. The Rams are 5-point favorites coming in. 5-point favorites. Ryan, we'll start with you. The Pats are 6-6. They're the shock of the year. I mean, they're one of the big shockers this season, but they're getting 5 from the Rams.
Yeah, give me the Rams and the points.
Rams.
You're gonna lay the 5?
I'm gonna take the Rams by a touchdown. Actually, I think they're a better team. I think they're offensively creative. I don't think that New England is defensively talented enough to keep up at this point. I like the Rams in this game.
See, I struggled with this one because I do think that the Rams would cover, but then, it's the NFC West and everything we think we know changes every week. So that made it harder, but I will take the Rams in this one and lay the 5.
I don't bet against Bill Belichick. I've learned that in my lifetime. I don't bet against the greatest of all time, and here's why. They just went to the Chargers where they had the hotshot Rookie of the Year quarterback, the darling of the NFL world, and they beat the shit out of them. They beat him with Gunnar Olszewski and Damian Harris, and N'Keal Harry finally caught a touchdown for the first time in his life. They won 45-0. The Jets don't lose 45-0. The Chiefs couldn't beat the Jets 45-0 right now. This is incredible that this happened. I think the Patriots they're figuring it out. This is what we've learned. Great coaches are truly the difference in this league. If you've got a Belichick, a Sean Payton, a Mike Tomlin, you got a chance to win every week. Give me New England and the points. I'm going to say they cover.
I don't know if New England's going to score 5 points this game.
And we said we're doing half points, right? So it's 5.5.
5.5. We're going to go up to 5. We'll tease it up to 5.5 because that's right. Because I saw 3 books and 3 books had it at 5. Unless you see one like MGM, I'm sure has it at 5.5 or something like that. So
yeah, let's go 5.5 because we don't want to have pushes.
Yeah, 5.5, no pushes. I'm going to take New England. Give me the points. I think they cover this game or even win it outright. I would not be shocked. All right, next one. We have first. We haven't had the Vikings in a while, so here we are. The Minnesota Vikings on the road against Tampa Bay. Tampa is 6.5-point favorites over Minnesota. That feels like a big number. Zach, where are we going?
The thing that I like about this game for Tampa is the week off.
That's true.
And I think that they have struggled recently, and part of that is they haven't had a bye. They haven't had a chance to get in, to self-scout, to do some of that work. It's a lot of points, but I'm going to go with Tampa Bay.
Taking Tampa and the points. Ryan?
I'm torn on this, and there's a lot of variables that go into my pick. If you would have asked me this 2 weeks ago, I think I would have taken Minnesota to win it. I'm really concerned with the lack of Eric Kendricks on the field. I think without him, you really lose your defensive quarterback, and when you don't have that against a quarterback like Tom Brady, you really run the risk of getting put in a shootout situation. On the other side, shootout situations, I trust Kirk Cousins a little bit. And I think that we have the weapons to keep up. He's playing hot. It's a lot of points to give up for a team that can score points if they're putting the ball in the air frequently in Minnesota. They've got some big play threats, and the Bucs have shown that when they get tested over the top, they're not that good on defense. If there's any kind of time for the quarterback, they're presented with some problems, and Minnesota's going to hit them underneath with some crossers and soften up the outside, and they can throw to Jefferson and Thielen. They can throw to guys outside. It's going to happen. So I don't know that Minnesota's going to win this outright, but I think it's closer than 6.5. I take Minnesota to cover the points.
The challenge here is, Tampa Bay can score. I don't think that's the problem. Their issue is always when they run up against a tough defense, and I'm not sure Minnesota's as tough right now. The Kendricks injury is a real problem. I still think they're not very good in the secondary, and I don't think they get home enough on the defensive line to put the pressure on Tom requisite to make Tom scared. When Tom Brady has time, he's going to cut you up. That's the one thing he can still do. The one thing that he doesn't like, though, is pressure. Right when they have to, get the ball out quick, and Bruce Arians seems to be kind of anti-motion and hot routes. It just seems like they're not on the same page when it comes to that stuff, and quick hitters and quick throws and stuff. But I still think this is the defense that's ripe for the pickings for Tampa Bay, and I think this could be one that they get right on, and I wouldn't be surprised if they win it going away. I think they can win it by double digits. I'm going to take Tampa to win this game, and I think win it fairly handily against Minnesota. I think Minnesota, these last 2 weeks are scary. Yes, they've won it, and you don't have to apologize for winning. I think the quote of the season is it's not how, it's how many. I don't care how many, how close it is or whatever, but it should give you pause. They really could have very easily lost to Carolina and Jacksonville in back-to-back weeks at home. This is not the most impressive 6-6 in the world. Give me
at the
Tampa.
same time, too, I also, if I'm Minnesota, I almost wonder if you'll see them throw everything at the wall defensively. Some really unusual blitz things that we really haven't seen from Zimmer in a number of years because he's had an established defense. And I don't mean to take too much time on this because I know you want to move on, but it just a thought I had while you were talking about it. It makes me wonder if maybe we'll see Zimmer kind of played, a little bit, a little to a lot more aggressively against Tom Brady, trying to throw everything against the wall.
Yeah, he'll have to. All right, last one. We got Pittsburgh coming off a loss here. Not a good one, not a very impressive one. They're going to go on the road to Buffalo, where Buffalo's actually 2.5-point favorites for Sunday Night Football. Zach, 2.5-point favorites, Buffalo Bills versus Pittsburgh.
I will take the Pittsburgh Steelers and the points. I just don't. I haven't been a huge Buffalo guy all year. They do some things well, and I think the way the game played out for Pittsburgh last week, I expect them to do more this week.
Ryan.
Give me Buffalo and the points. I think that they're going to take the top off the defense. I think they can run the screen game to death, and I think that defense is better than advertised. They're going to get pressure on the quarterback. They're going to lock down outside. And to be honest, if the drops continue for Pittsburgh, I worry that they're not going to be able to keep pace with a team that can take them over the top. I'm going to take Buffalo.
See, he's in love with the Buffalo defense. I told you he was a Leslie Frazier guy.
I love me some cover two, man.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, the next coach of the Jets, Leslie Frazier. Wouldn't be shocked at all. Like it's just right out. It's just like Todd Bowles. It'll be perfect. Just a quiet defensive coordinator, not real big on emotions, keeps things pretty calm. All right, I like Pittsburgh to respond. I think they'll play better this week. I think the short week again is a tough scene for them, but I think they will respond. I think the drops thing was weird. I agree it was. I think the loss was a good thing for them. I think they were a little tight. And the only thing I am concerned about is they have now lost 3 linebackers in basically 3. They've lost, with Dupree going down against Buffalo, then they lose Spillane, and early in the season they lost I'm drawing a blank on the name of who they lost in the early part of the season, but it was one of their stronger linebackers. Devin Bush, thank you very much. I lost. So they've lost some guys, and I'm a little concerned about that. But Josh Allen has won some games, and he's impressing me. But this is a 2 primetime games in a row. You beat San Francisco, beat Pittsburgh, and you'll have my attention. That's the way I look at it. You go beat Pittsburgh in a Sunday night game with all the people watching you, play a great game, and you'll have my attention, Josh Allen. But until then, until further notice, give me Pittsburgh. I'll take Pittsburgh in the points. All right. Here we go. Time for power rankings. I expect that this will change a little bit. Maybe not for Zach, because Zach thought Pittsburgh was garbage last week. So we'll see what happens this week. Number 1 seed, I think we can all agree, is at the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
Yes. Kansas City is the number 1 team in the NFL. The number 2 team in the NFL is
the New Orleans Saints, based on the way their defense is playing. They've done it multiple times now, and they've done it with the backup quarterback. And I had them a little lower last week, but I'm a believer in the way they're playing right now. I've got them at 2.
Ryan.
I agree.
Ryan at 2. I agree. I think New Orleans is the second best team right now. They're ranked number 2 for me. Number 3, Ryan.
Number 3 for me is see, this is where it gets a little muddy for me.
It's a little muddy for everybody.
Yeah, number 3 for me is going to be the Cleveland Browns.
Wow.
Convincing win. I think that they're better than Pittsburgh. I think that they just
don't think Tennessee's
decimated a
that
team
good.
that's very, very good.
Wow.
So
number 3.
The thing that's baffling to me about the Browns is they're 9-3. And they have given up more points than they've scored.
Is that true? I haven't even looked at that.
Yes, they've
scored blowouts.
They've scored 306 and they have given up 321. My third team is the Green Bay Packers. Defensively, I felt like they've played better the last 3 weeks. I know we talked about it in the week they lost the Colts, that it wasn't necessarily a defensive issue. And the defense showed up in a lot of tough spots. The offense put them in. They've played well against the Bears and the Eagles, who, are not good offenses, but that's what you're supposed to do against not good offenses. Mm-hmm. And offensively, they can play with anyone. So Green Bay is my number 3.
And this is where the muddiness, I agree with Ryan, continues. I'm going Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh, that was a loss, but they're still 11-1. They still have 2 wins over Baltimore. They have a win over Tennessee. They have a win over Cleveland. All of these teams that, we look at as contenders, Steelers have already beaten them. So yes, it was a bad loss against Washington. There's no question about that. And does this team have some holes right now? Yep, no question about that. But they're still 11-1. I still think they're a good team. I still think they're well coached. They have one of the 5 best coaches in the NFL. They still have a quarterback who can make plays. I still like their wide receiver core. Yes, they dropped a lot of passes, but I like Juju Smith-Schuster. I like Eric Ebron at tight end. I like I like Johnson, and I like Claypool. I think that combination makes things happen, especially if they can bounce back here. I think they get this win against Buffalo. So I got them at 3. Number 4. Ryan, or Zach. I got to go to Zach here. Zach, who's number 4?
I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that, it was a bit tongue-in-cheek last week when I was putting them at 5. But I thought the loss was one that could be expected. Or maybe not expected, but you could see it coming a little bit. And so I think that they're good, but they've got issues that have been exposed. Their run game isn't great, but they've got the running back coming back now. James Conner. I think they're the 4th team right now.
Ryan.
Number 4 for me is the Green Bay Packers for all the reasons stated above, and I still think that they're just a very good team. I think that I think that the problem for me is that they struggle against teams that are really physical, and that's my concern with them. I want to see how they do playing against Tennessee a little bit later this year. I'm not convinced that they're able to stop teams that are very physical teams, and that's something that you have to do late in the year. So I'm a little worried about that, but I still think they're just a really good team. I think they're going to shut a lot of teams down. I just worry about those kinds of games, so they're number 4 for me.
I have Green Bay at number 4 as well. I think Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams right now look damn near unstoppable. I mean, it seems like he can get what he wants week in and week out, Devontae Adams and Rodgers. And as long as those two are on the field together, I feel like Adams is good for minimum 7 catches and a minimum 110 yards. Like, he just torched Darius Slay over the weekend. And it's like, again, we talked about this in our little text stream. Are we sure Darius Slay is good? Well, everybody tells me he's a shutdown corner, and Devontae Adams ate his lunch. And I wonder if there's not a corner in the league that can stop him. I don't know. But I worry about I still worry a little bit that there's not a whole lot after Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams, and that if you can somehow figure out a scheme on Adams, that the rest of that offense can be had. But until then, they're still the 4th best team, and I agree, they're really, really good.
So you're out on Big Bob Tonyan?
I like Tonyan. I do. I really do. I think he's found money.
That guy's a baller.
Yeah, he's found money. Like, he is, like, I don't think they thought going into the season, well, here's our tight end. I mean, they have Mercedes Lewis for that. He's, like I said, that's found money. That's a $10 bill on the street that you just picked up and put in your pocket.
Yeah, but they don't pay Mercedes Lewis to catch balls. I mean, the reality is Mercedes Lewis should have a number in the 70s, not the 80s.
That's probably
an extra tackle.
That's probably true. All right, Zach, the 5 team for you.
I was really tempted to put the Washington football team here. Three straight wins. They do have a positive point differential, unlike Ryan's Browns team. But I am going to go maybe down the list a little bit, and I just want to acknowledge a team that is not being talked about a ton right now, and that's the Miami Dolphins.
Ooh.
They're 8-4. They are winning or they're not winning the division. Sorry, they're behind the Buffalo team, but they have a shot at winning that division. They're winning games with the backup quarterback, who was the starter and then wasn't, and now or whatever. And I'm excited for their game this week against the Chiefs.
I love Brian Flores. Holy smoke. Like, Brian Flores, the fact that he wanted to kill that Bengals player who took out his I was like, man, that's a head coach that has no issues with that locker room. Like, his Dolphins locker room is behind him 100%. Like,
and they play a little defense. I mean, I think they're going to create some problems here for Kansas City. And for whoever they play in the playoffs. And I think that's the game I'm most interested in this coming week.
Ryan, who's your 5?
My 5 is the Buffalo Bills. I think
Yeah.
they're a good physical football team. They play good football. I'm behind them 100%.
I like Buffalo too. Buffalo's my 5 as well, Ryan. I really like, again, Josh Allen's got to win this game for me Sunday night. I think if you want me to call them legitimate title contenders, they have to win this game on Sunday night. Otherwise, they're in that second tier. I like Miami a lot because I like Brian Flores, but I also think Sean McDermott's one of these he's putting a pretty good resume together in Buffalo. as a head coach. And he was one of those hires that didn't do a lot for me when he got the job. But to his credit, he's done a pretty darn good job in Buffalo. He's assembled a really good staff. They've brought Josh Allen along, I think, in a really nice way. And I didn't think the Stephon Diggs thing was going to work, and I was wrong. I was 100% wrong. Like, he's done a really good job up there, and it's worked out well. It's worked out well for us, too, in Minnesota, but it's worked out well in Buffalo. No complaints so far. Great job by them.
It's one of those rare happy separations for Diggs and the Vikings.
Yeah, it's worked out for both teams. I would say both teams
are happy with their side of the trade.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often, but I think, if you ask both teams right now, they'd be like thrilled. Like, yeah, we got everything we wanted out of this. This has worked out perfectly.
I mean, you asked Kirk Cousins this week. He said he was thrilled he had Justin Jefferson.
Why wouldn't you? Justin Jefferson's having an awesome season. All right, let's go to the Elimination Chamber. We're starting to move to the teams that might have had a chance once that seemed like they're maybe fading back. I feel like we've put almost every bad team in the Elimination Chamber. To me, there are only really two choices here. We'll see what options we go with. Who are we nominating this week, guys? Ryan, who do you got first?
Did we eliminate Chicago?
We have not. We have talked about that.
I'm thinking we're going to eliminate Chicago this week.
The Chicago Bears, losers of like 6 in a row.
Six in a row.
They look to be, I don't know. I don't know.
Completely out of sorts. This team is just, the wheels have fallen off. The axle has broken. The quarter panels are starting to fall off. The doors are coming off next. There's just soon going to be a Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy sitting in the front seat, wondering where their vehicle went.
Zach.
Yeah, I agree with the Bears take. I think the other option is the Philadelphia Eagles. But in doing that, I mean, if we do make that move, we are all in on Washington because they're the only team we have left in the NFC East.
That's right, because we got rid of the Giants so early, and now the Giants and the Vikings are working their way back into the mix here, even though we've written them off. But they're in the chamber as the leaders. But, yeah, you're right. I think the Bears are the team. I think they are. I think when the question was asked of Matt Nagy on Sunday, and I think this tells you everything you need to know about that situation. And I don't know if you guys heard this, but the reporter asked him, like, hey, this is 2 seasons in a row that you guys have kind of collapsed here. Can you explain? And he went, I don't know. When the coach doesn't know, that's a tough scene. That is a tough spot to be in when you've collapsed 2 seasons in a row and there's no answers. I think the head coach is smart. See, that's the thing. I don't think Nagy's I don't think he's a bad offensive mind. I even think he's a guy that would be pretty good with a second chance around. But to me, he might need to go somewhere and call plays for a year or two and really hone the craft of developing the QB, calling the game, and making adjustments on the, and learning how to adjust on the fly, because they've figured him out. All the tricks that he threw at him in year 1 don't work anymore.
I think he's just a coach that got the yips. If I'm being honest with you, I think that he's a really good, really talented coach who, you double doink in that playoff game against Philadelphia, and all of a sudden your brain goes haywire and you're trying to figure everything out. And he hasn't figured it out. He hasn't been able to get back to that spot. And, because he was kind of grooved, that first year in Chicago. He was really just kind of in it. He looked, the team looked really good. They were all way behind him. And you kind of thought, damn, the Chicago team looks like a team that can be really good for a long time. And then they double doink it and everything falls apart. And it's wild to see just how much that team has fallen apart.
Yeah, didn't you say on Twitter that the Bears' time was coming a few years ago?
I did, and I wasn't alone in that.
I knew that was coming at some point.
Are we going to talk about the fact that
I don't think the problem is the coach. I don't think the problem is the coach in Chicago.
I don't either.
But that doesn't mean he keeps his job either. I think he needs to get somewhere with a competent quarterback. Because I think what we've seen is that Trubisky is not the answer. Mm-hmm. And we've also seen that Foles is a backup quarterback.
Do you wonder if maybe that LA becomes the hot destination for someone like Nagy if they don't go after someone like Bieniemy? that if Nagy's on the market, they might go after him.
Like if they got rid of Anthony Lynn in for the Chargers, and they just said we want to keep a guy with head coaching experience and a smart offensive mind, could it be a guy like him?
If what he needs is a quarterback and weapons around him to run his scheme, you've got a nice young mobile quarterback in LA.
Yeah, I think the other issue is that they are the second team in LA right now.
Yep.
And so they need something that sparks them, and I think they need to come up. They need to be, the run and gun offense. They need to put up, 50 a game, and it doesn't matter if you get beat 60-50. At least it's entertaining football and it's a story,
right?
And then they need someone to figure out how to win games there, because they seem to actively try to lose games at sometimes. It's bananas. And I do think though that's the hottest job. Like if that job becomes available and they let Anthony Lynn go, I think there's going to be a lot of people who want that job. Like if you're Eric Bieniemy, that's the job you leave KC for. Don't you think? Like that's the hot job. If you're a coordinator, you want that job.
And again, I think it comes down to the quarterback, right?
Right.
Like they've clearly demonstrated that they have a quarterback who's going to be there for a long time if you can win. Because if you don't win, he's going to want to go somewhere else, right? He's going to want to go play somewhere else. But if you're Eric Bieniemy, if you're Matt Nagy, you're a person who's shown that you can run an offense. Justin Herbert to me seems like the ideal kind of guy you want to go with.
Right. Doug Peterson too. He might want to. If you're going to leave Philly, there's your gig.
The other thing is you can go to New York and end up with Trevor Lawrence.
It's true.
And obviously there's some other issues with New York. You could also go to Jacksonville and end up with Justin Fields. So I think, it depends on what you think of the other, right? The other situations, the cap money, the weapons, the things like that. Because I think all three of those are good jobs to take. I also think if you go to the Jets, that division is more open now.
Could be, yeah.
Like Miami's playing well and Buffalo's playing well, but do they have staying power? I'm not sure yet. We'll see.
So the Bears, you have made your way to the Elimination Chamber, which basically concedes the division to the Green Bay Packers, which it did anyway. I mean, they have a 3-game advantage on everybody with 4 to go. In golf, that's almost dormy. That's not quite there, but it's close. It's very close. So the Bears welcome.
I will be excited to cash that ticket here in a week or two.
Okay.
It was like plus 200 on Green Bay. So
wow, that's okay.
That felt like a good value bet to make at the start of the year.
Not bad, my friend. Well done. It was a great pod, guys. Well done tonight. Once again, we went
a little long.
We went a little long, but I want to thank everybody who continues to listen and support the podcast. Once again, you find us again on Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. I'd appreciate you to do that. Go to Spotify and click the follow button. I would appreciate you to do that as well. You can also find us on Google Podcasts. Do the Google searches. Once again, I'm not the second baseman for the White Sox, but I will be if that means you listen to the podcast. I don't know. I could say I am. I guess that would work. And I want to also thank you again for continuing to listen on Podbean. You had something
the soon-to-be division champion White Sox.
That's true. I'm the second baseman for the soon-to-be Central Division champion Chicago White Sox. What do you think of that? What do you think about... Anyway, continue to listen to the pod. I really do appreciate all the people who have continued to listen and support what we're doing. And that'll do it for today. We'll see you back here very, very soon. A lot of stuff coming down the pike here on the podcast, and us three will be back again next week to talk about this upcoming week in the NFL. Until then, for Zach, for Ryan, I'm Tim saying keep your head up, and we'll see you next time.